So I had some people reach out to me and they've asked me about my backstory, what I went through, how I got sober, how I'm happy, how how I have found joy since quitting drinking. Um, so I'm going to answer that. People want to know what it is that I do to be who I am, I guess. Um, so I figured I would take some time to discuss my experiences with you. Um, However long that takes, I don't really know. We'll find out, right? First of all, I am not a doctor, shockingly. I am just sharing my experiences. I don't want you to misconstrue anything that I have to say as medical advice because it's not. I am just a guy who got sober, stayed sober, and has had a really damn good time with life since then, right? If you need a medically assisted detox, if you think you do, you should do it. That's all there is to it. You should do it. I've done it. I've done it the hard way too, but do not advise that to anybody. If you think you need treatment, you should do it. If you think that you need therapy, you should do it. If you think you want to go to AA, you should do it. This is your life. This is your sobriety. This recovery. That is all I want for you. And whatever that looks like for you, what it looks like for you, you're the one that's going to decide those things. So you can take my experiences, use what worthwhile, and leave the rest of it on the cutting room floor, right? You don't just keep what works, right? I'm just sharing tools. Put them in your toolbox and use them when they work. Otherwise, don't worry about them, right? Um, be smart about this. Okay. It's your life, rest of your life. All I want for you is to have a whole life. Find sobriety, find recovery. That's it. So I always had the problem with drinking, like from beginning. I didn't drink a beer, right? I drank to get blackout wasted. That was just what I did. I liked the feeling. I liked being wasted. Um, Early on, it was almost like it gave me superpowers. I could talk to anybody. Like one of my first big recollections of getting drunk, a girl asked me why I wasn't drinking. It was my birthday party, and I wanted to drive. That's one thing early in sobriety. I would stay sober, not sobriety, in my addiction. I would stay sober because I wanted to drive. Yeah, it didn't last forever. But anyways, so I would drink and then I would talk to girls at parties and stuff. That was something I wouldn't do if I was sober. Um, Fast forward, just so you, spoiler alert. Eventually, the superpowers didn't, they wore off. And it was the opposite, actually. So I drank from probably 16 until I was like 21, binge drinking for the most part, weekends. And once I turned 21, it was a little different because I had my own place. I could drink whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to like get someone to buy alcohol for me. So it increased, but it wasn't like a steady increase. It would ebb and flow. Um, if there were more parties to go to, there was more drinking to be had. Um, but about 3 years before I got sober, my drinking got really bad. Daily, like every day. I almost never skipped a day. At first, I I always told myself I didn't want to be like really drunk in front of my kids, so I would generally wait until after they went to bed to really start drinking. I mean, I would drink at barbecues or something with my parents, like have a beer or two, but never really like aim to get blackout wasted while my kids were like cruising around. Um, because I mean, I had a drinking problem, not a horrible human, right? Like that's, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we are still humans, right? We do make mistakes. we are not the sum of our mistakes, right? So I want you to really internalize that right now. If you're thinking about getting sober, because you're going to uncover a bunch of stuff, right? That maybe you're not comfortable with. Like I wasn't stoked to think about the times that I did drink more than I should have drank um, around my kids, because that was always a goal of mine not to do that, right? So before I get super lost in the weeds here, yeah, my drinking it was daily, and it did start to increase about a year and a half before I got sober. My wife and kids moved away. My wife took a job. I was still in school. We still in a house. Goal was I get to where she's at. Um, I didn't have an excuse to stay sober anymore, right? Like that sounds crazy, but lots of people like have excuses to get drunk, right? And I'm talking about having an excuse to stay sober. So that excuse went away, and I started drinking earlier and earlier. At first it was like, I want to talk to my kids on the phone, so I can only have like a beer or two before I talk to them on the phone. I don't want to be waiting. Um, but then I didn't care about that as much. Um, I couldn't hurt them, right? Again, remember, we're not monsters, even though we feel like it sometimes. So then it was like 4 o'clock. I'm like, okay, 4 o'clock is happy hour. That's fine. Um, I ended up losing a job, quitting a job. I don't, my drinking didn't help. We'll just leave it that way. Um, so then I'm drinking at noon because I was a full time student. I had enough money to cover the bills from, you know, grants, loans, all that kind of stuff. So I'd drink at noon sometimes. Then I realized that I could still get A's in school, um, even if I was drinking. That was super problematic because it was like there was nothing that could stop me from drinking. There was no like consequences. I mean, there were. My life was falling apart, but it didn't feel that way all the time, and it made it easy to drink. And then when it did feel that way, like when it did feel like my life when like it was a dumpster fire, I then also wanted to drink. So it was, hey, what do you know? Nothing but a bunch of excuses. Um, so yeah, that's where I got. I did get sober at one point on my own. I literally had to go to a different state, stay in a hotel room for a week, because I knew what I was doing. Like I knew my habits. I knew. I mean, it's not. I was unconscious. I knew what was going on. I was so powerless over it. Right. I can't explain it to people that don't understand it. And that's why I'm trying to help people, because I know what they're going through. I know what you're going through. So we understand each other. It's easier to communicate about what these things are like. Like these stories might resonate with you, right? So I forced myself to go through DTs like in another state in a hotel. It sucked. Don't do it. Like don't do it if you're at the point that you're so physically dependent, chemically dependent on alcohol. Go get help. I I can't advocate more for that. I have to just tell you, do that. Not worth it. Um, Shockingly, I sober for like a week. Then I started getting jaundice. Like I was just like, dude, really? So I go to the hospital. Turns out it wasn't actually the drinking. I mean, we know better. But my liver was okay. I had a blockage with my gallbladder, bilirubin's backing up all this stuff. But it was scary. I was super sick. I was the weakest I've ever been in my life. And when I got out, I mean, it was all I could do to walk, like walk. I'm not even exaggerating. And it was rough. So then I stayed sober for, I don't know, like 3 months or something. I mean, I had some sobriety, some time throughout all of this. I mean, I didn't just drink every day from 15 until my 30s. But that was like my last stint of sobriety before I finally got sober. But I relapsed one more time and I drank for like 3 weeks. I went to a place called WBI in my hometown. Um, that sucked. And honestly, it made me want to drink. Like sounds crazy. I went into detox on in there for like 72 hours, and I had never wanted to drink more in my life. I was in there with a dude that was like trying to get them to up the drugs that he was taking to because he was in there to detox off alcohol too. He kept wetting the bed. It was bad. It was a bad experience, and it didn't make me want to get sober. It should have, but it didn't. Then I drank for like another week, and then I went to treatment. Went to inpatient treatment, and I learned a lot while I was there. And it was super expensive. It took every last dime that I had at the time, um, and I would pay for it again and again and again. And part of that in my head is that, like, if I start drinking, there's more than just the consequence if I start drinking. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to drink, but there's always this like voice in the back of my head that's like, tens of thousands of dollars wasted down the drain, and it makes it pretty easy to just like stay sober, and because I don't want to go through that again. And every time I got sober again, like because I did it multiple times, it got harder. The experience was worse, more painful, and I just don't want to do it again. I don't know how many times I can quit, and I don't want to find out the hard way. So I told you I'd give you the backstory. Like I don't need to get into like war stories, like how drunk I got and stuff. That nobody cares. Doesn't matter. We're not having a contest here. So let's talk early recovery. What things were important for me, were helpful to me, because I think you should go to inpatient if you need to. I will tell you, though, that all of the tools you will get in inpatient, you can get without spending a bunch of money. But spending a bunch of money helps it stick. So that spending money on getting help is helpful. This is crazy. It's helpful. I'd also like to put this into perspective. You are probably spending hundreds of dollars, potentially a month, drinking, which means you can then spend hundreds of dollars on your recovery at first. It's not a big deal, right? So like eating healthy is a big deal, especially in early recovery. There are foods that are good for your liver that you can eat. Supplements that you can take, like milk thistle and stuff. Taking your B vitamins, taking your regular multivitamin, all these things that we don't do when we're drinking all the time. You should start doing. And yes, they cost money. But guess what? When you quit buying alcohol every day, you have it all of a sudden. It's weird. Sleep habits. That was one of the hardest things to deal with when I first got sober, because I was already a poor sleeper. Then alcohol became the way that I slept. By the way, you don't sleep well when you're drunk. You just think you do. You just pass out. So it just took me a while, like a month or two, to start having like full night's sleep, being able to go to sleep around the same time, get up around the same time. But all of these habits are important to your recovery. Newsflash, your drinking is a habit. It is a terrible habit that you formed over years. Like, if you go through the whole story I just shared with you, you can see a habit that formed and then just grew. That's all that happened, right? And then eventually, I became physically dependent, chemically dependent on it, right? But it all started as a habit. And if you're at a point where you're not going to get like terrible withdrawals, you don't need a medically assisted detox. Like, if you just have a bad habit, now's your time, man. like do that. Undo your habit, change your habit. Hydrating. We were like dehydrated the whole time we were drinking. without even realizing it because we're drunk. You got to fix that. Eating, I already mentioned a little bit. Start taking care of yourself. Eat better. Eat good food. Eat at regular times, like regular intervals. Um, I was literally just eating pizza and drinking black velvet for like, I'm not exaggerating, months, like for months in a row. Just nothing but black velvet and pizza. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I would say 90% of the time because I would only stay sober long enough to get black velvet and like order a pizza right before I left, so that pizza showed up so that I could like eat before I drank. Because that was kind of for a while a hard rule I had. I wouldn't drink on an empty stomach. Then I did because I could get drunk easier. Anyways, habit stacks. Okay, your habits. It's like yarn because it's made out of multiple strands. Right, all of your habits work this way. This is how your willpower works. So if you don't want to drink, you are fighting against a piece of yarn that's got like a bunch of strands. You got to undo it, and then you can start putting strands on a new habit. So you need to form new habits. For me, getting active, big deal. Like that is huge in early recovery. I talked about how at first I could only walk. I did that when I was so sick and like weak the first time I got sober. I would walk like every day. I made it a goal to walk. I didn't know it at the time, but that physical activity helps rewire the reward centers in your brain. It allows you to become happy again, which is cool, by the way. Being happy, it's cool. So outside of those things, personal development was a really big deal for me. Um, I don't know. I guess I felt like I was making up for lost time a little bit. And I can see where drinking shockingly stunted my growth. Um, so I started reading. I was interested in what I could do to fix myself like faster, I guess, after I got sober. You know, what could I do to help my liver regenerate? Um, when I was first walking, I was having issues with my knees. So it was like, what could I do with my knees? The other thing that's big is to set goals. I, as nicely as possible, quitting drinking isn't really a goal. Like that is something that we should already be doing. And the way that these habits function in our brain, the way neural networks function, the way that all this stuff's wired together, you shouldn't make quitting drinking your primary goal. Because every time you think about quitting drinking, you're thinking about drinking. So have you spent more time thinking about quitting drinking or more time actually just drinking in your life? And I think that's easy to answer. So come up with a different goal, like find things to replace even thinking about drinking, saying drinking, get that stuff gone, right? Get a hobby that you can see growth in and development in. I don't care what it is really. I don't think it matters. But it needs to be something that you can get better at. Again, this is going back to rewards pathways in your brain. We lived in a way to where it was like, boop, super high, and then a crash. That's not normal. Like normal is like just kind of like this. So you need to start developing things that just kind of are even keel. Hobbies are really good for that. Um, People ask me what it took for me to get sober. And that's a really weird question to answer because it's what it took me. I don't know what it will take you. I don't know what it will take anyone that I work with. Um, but I think there's a lot of traps that exist. Um, I do think you need to want it, like for you. People say like, well, don't quit for other people. I don't think that that's always like true. I think you can think like you can quit for other people. You just got to make sure that at some point in your recovery or sobriety that you are quitting for you in there. Because like if that person leaves, and that's just me being real about it. Like if you quit for a spouse and your spouse still doesn't want to be with you, um, I've seen people go back to drinking because of that, right? So I don't think that's a hard, fast rule, like that you have to quit for yourself. I just think it is generally a good idea. But the best idea is just to quit. So whatever it takes, like that's what I'm really getting at here is like whatever it takes for you to get sober is what matters, right? I, I fight with people. Not fight, but I have an opinion on um, being ready, right? Oh, you have to be ready. Like no, you have to decide to be ready. Um, there's no like magic moment where you're ready, right? You just decided one day to be ready. I decided one day to be ready. I was like, this is the day I'm doing it. Okay. Um, I'd had days before that where I decided to be ready. I didn't. You have to decide to be ready. But here's the reality. As nicely as possible, losers don't wait for good weather to get out and train if they're like long distance cross country runners, right? Um, so how long are you going to wait to decide to be ready? That's it. And I'm not, like I said, to be as nice and make it as kind as possible, but that's just the truth. It's the truth. I did the same thing. I used to be a smoker. I used to chew tobacco, and I did that after I'd quit alcohol, right? And when I quit, I just decided to quit. I would do this thing that we do with drinking sometimes too. Like, oh, I'll quit on Monday. I'll quit when this pack's gone. I'll quit this. All of these goals of when you're going to quit, right? Um, you can't do it that way. I can't do it that way. Most people I've worked with can't do it that way. Like you today, now, right now, right? So just decide to be ready. I hope you stick around, working with me, checking out my content. I work with a lot of people individually, group setting. I might be for you if you don't want to go to AA or if you want to go to AA. I did AA for a long time. I'm not knocking AA. Like if you need it, you need it. If it works, it works. Like I want you to be sober. I don't care what that takes, right? I just want you to be sober. This might be for you if you can't afford treatment or if you've done treatment before and it didn't stick or whatever. Like all of us are just looking for the person that we can connect with to help us get where we want to go, right? We're all of us. I don't care how successful or special you are, where every one of us looks for their hero, their mentor, their role model, whatever. If it's me, cool. If it's someone else, cool. I just, again, want you to be sober. Get sober, whatever it takes, right? If you've had bad experiences with therapy, this might be for you. I don't know. Maybe you're just bored. Maybe you just ran into my content. You keep watching me. Whatever the case is, like I'm stoked you're here. Stick around. You might learn something, and I don't know. Worst case scenario, you might end up sober. Thanks for sticking around, listening to me. I hope I didn't get too ranty. If you have any questions, reach out. I love to help people.